Dale stuff in the house, the motor.
Welcome to share mine.
That rig. Let's see. You know, the calling board and all that.
All right, good morning. We'll go ahead and call the meeting for December 3rd, 2019 to order for the Economic Development Authority. Charity, if we can start with the roll call, please.
Okay.
Dr. Freeman.
Yeah.
He is.
That's right.
Dr. Ward Costello is not here. Director Bain.
Here.
Director
Here. Here.
I expect Director Trent to be here shortly. Is he here?
Very shortly.
You are. Director Trent, I'm sorry, I didn't see you walk in. Okay, we have a quorum. Did not.
Thank you, Charity. We have two items on our consent agenda this morning. The approval of the minutes from September 10th, 2019, and an updated financial statement. Any comments on anything for the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval? I have a motion from Mr. Trent, second. Second from Mr. Metz. Call that for a vote, please.
Director Freeman. Director Trent.
Aye.
Director Bain.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Metz.
Aye.
Chairman Booth.
Aye. Thank you, Chair. First item on our agenda is public comment. Come or signed up for that at this point, which will move us into new business. Today, we're very fortunate that Amy Jordan with HREDA has come to join us this morning. And Amy's been there now for 6 months or so?
Since June 17th.
Almost 6 months.
Yes.
And so we'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me this morning. As Chairman Booth mentioned, I'm Amy Jordan. I'm the Vice President of Business Development, Customer Relationship Management with the Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance. Prior to this, I served side by side with Dave Callis as the director at James City County, so we worked very closely together. I also spent almost 13 years in the city of Hampton as the redevelopment manager, and I've worked in several other Hampton Roads localities, and I'm a resident here on the peninsula in Hampton, so have lived and or worked in 8 different localities in Hampton Roads. So I'm 5 of those on the peninsula, so I'm pretty excited to be here this morning, and no tunnel traffic to get here, so
Even better.
which is great. So I want to talk to you a little bit about I don't know if I can get that to, wait, does it work on this?
Everyone does have a copy of a presentation.
Okay.
under your-
Great.
if you'd like to
I'll just
follow along.
advance them on here.
we go.
So I want to talk to you a little bit this morning about business retention expansion and what we're looking at for the region. As you probably are aware, our regional organization, as pretty much all regional economic development organizations, had historically just been focused on attraction. So going after that big fish and who can we bring in. And attraction is still an important part of filling that pipeline. But about 1.5 years ago, we did the IBM study, and we realized that I guess it was probably about 2 years ago, that we really need to focus on growing our own and how important that was. And we could create so many more jobs focusing on that, which also could help our attraction because we can also focus on supply chain in that pipeline. So I was hired and came in on June to be able to help pull together a regional business retention expansion program for Hampton Roads. And it's pretty unique because I haven't been able to find any other region like ours that's doing something like this. You have some chamber organizations in other parts of the country that do regional ones, but it's more of a chamber through a metro city. I've seen some that are done through universities, but to be able to have 11 very autonomous jurisdictions come together and support something like this has been pretty fantastic. So we're really excited to be that example for Virginia, but potentially, further than that reaching. So what is, our overarching goals of that? Of course, it's to keep them in the locality. Nobody's looking to just pick up company A and move it to space B in another locality. We do recognize that sometimes companies outgrow a space, and there just isn't an opportunity for them anymore in that location. We've had some that have come to us and said, now we have a contract, it requires us to be within 5 miles of a military gate, or we need to have a space that's within such a proximity to the Port of Virginia. So in those cases, of course, we work very closely with the localities where they are, and first step is always to see, is there a way to keep them there? But if it isn't, we want to keep them in Hampton Roads. We don't want them going anywhere else. And so we want to keep them here. And if there is for some reason that they just aren't going to stay in Hampton Roads and it's nothing that we can control, we want to work with VEDP to see what we can do to keep them in Virginia. At the same time, we want to work with VEDP to help try to grow them in Virginia and beyond, and help them with exports in their export programs, because again, it's all about strengthening that web, and the stronger they get here, even as they get global, the better off we are. So just a quick overview, you're probably aware of most of this, but just, it's a great reminder of some of the partners that we're always working with. We have the Hampton Roads Workforce Council up there, but that also includes the Peninsula Workforce Council, because they are a consortium, because they are sort of, linked together now. So we work with both workforce organizations. The Hampton Roads Military Federal Facilities Alliance, HRUMFA, we work very closely with them as well. There's a few other organizations that we've been engaged with that aren't up here. A new one is MIBE, the Maritime Industrial Base Ecosystem. And of course we work with a lot of our higher ed partners. Yesterday I was at a meeting with ODU. Last week we were with Thomas Nelson. So again, we have a lot of regional engagement. But as far as the member localities, you can see, of course, those on the list, which includes on the Peninsula, Poquoson, Hampton, Newport News, and then everything on the south side from Southampton, Isle of Wight over to Virginia Beach. And so, we offer several services within the Alliance, and I don't think everybody always recognizes that. Again, it's not just about business attraction, it's about strengthening that economic ecosystem for our region, and the financial stability of our region. And so, I think we're going to have Steve Harrison here actually in a couple months to do a presentation to you. He is our Vice President of Business Intelligence, so he'll talk a little bit more about some of the in-depth market analysis capabilities that we have. But again, we're able to work with not only businesses here in the region and those that are looking to come the region on in-depth market analysis. We also work with our partner localities very carefully. We have at least about $50,000 worth of different programs that are basically your programs, because anything that you need with those, the business intelligence team is ready to help. And I know that Charity has had a lot of interaction with them on some projects recently, where they'll be, I think, coming in a couple weeks to do sort of a deeper dive using some of those business intelligence tools. Site selection assistance. This is something that actually is not just important to attraction, but we have started engaging this with retention expansion, where we are now serving as your site selector when you're looking at a Hampton Roads location. Of course, the goal of that is we want to keep them here. We want them only looking at Hampton Roads. And so as we have companies that say, hey, I want to expand in the region, I'm already here, I want to bring a facility back from another state and bring it here. We've got one now that is consolidating 13 small Class B offices into potentially up to a 600,000 square foot corporate headquarters. So we want to be able to serve as that site selector. It also allows us to make a very equitable process, so that we're being very equitable among the communities in the way that we work those opportunities, and be able to sort of sniff out opportunities that might not be on the market, or might not be something that you just pull up in a CoStar report. But by working with those localities that know their communities best, they'll know where, hey, you know what, we do have a parcel of land over here, or I think this building might be coming available and it's not quite ready yet. So we can be able to work those opportunities. We also can serve as a single point of contact for those businesses that are working throughout the region and looking at spaces. So again, we can help connect them. When they, naturally, we're always, when they're in a locality, going to say, hey, call your locality representatives, they're going to help you. But when it's a bigger issue, or they're looking at those space needs or whatever it is that's the region or beyond, we can serve as that single point of contact and help connect them, whether it's to the Port of Virginia, whether it's to linking them with opportunities with incentives at the state level, but we're able to help make those connections. And then, of course, connection to key resources, which I'll talk about a little bit here. So when we've looked at business retention expansion, we've wanted to really look at what are the areas that we can really help companies in Hampton Roads. And so we've identified these 5 areas that pretty much, are all areas that every company sometimes needs assistance in at some point in time to make sure they maintain their strength and presence. So of course, one of those is innovation. Again, that's being able to connect those companies with opportunities, whether it's R&D opportunities at Old Dominion or Virginia Tech, whether it is working with a representative of VIMS or NASA or Jefferson Lab, but we want to be able to make sure that they have those opportunities to innovate and stay competitive. We also have a lot of other companies in this region that we can put them in touch with. A great example is we have 2 different ones that I've worked closely with that do distribution logistics or automation for distribution logistics. And so when we're working with a company that wants to look at what they can do to improve their distribution systems, we can connect them with another opportunity like that to help them innovate. Software development, whatever it is, we can help pull those companies and resources together. Connecting to capital, again, companies always need to be able to have access to capital. So that's not only connecting them with lending opportunities that we have here, and again, we have very great relationships, especially with our regional and local banking system, but it's also, what are those venture capital opportunities that we have, and how can we better connect those companies, especially those that I like to call our rising stars in this region, in the entrepreneur realm. A lot of those we've seen have actually gone outside the region and even outside the state to get access to capital. When they do that and they have investors that are now in Austin or they're in San Diego or San Francisco, those investors are saying, hey, I want to keep a closer eye on my investment, so I want you to move the business here. We don't want to see that happen. We want to keep the money here, we want to keep the investment in here, and we want to grow the company here. So ready workforce, again, that is one that I think everybody struggles with these days. It's a good problem to have. It shows the strength of our economy. And I think that Hampton Roads really has a competitive advantage here for 2 reasons. Number one, we have the largest population of higher education students of any region in the state. And so with part-time and full-time at over 40,000 students. But we also have a fantastic veteran population with over 8,000 that exit the military each year and transition out. And so we want to make sure we're doing the best job we can to connect our transitioning military to those opportunities. We also have military spouses that are here, and they're looking for employment. So we've been working and growing programs in those areas and working with our partners, Hampton Roads Workforce Council and several other partners, to really improve those opportunities of trying to capture as many of those exiting military and military spouses that we can. Space needs. Again, if we don't have product, then there's no place to put them. So whether that is maintaining the inventory of businesses and making sure we keep a better inventory of what we have of available buildings, but it's also making sure we have ready sites. So just having a plot of land isn't necessarily a ready site, because if it has to get a wetlands delineation, you've got to clear the property, you're going to have to develop a land disturbance plan and a site plan and everything for that site. That has a lot of lead time. And when you have a company that comes to your location and they say, okay, can you get me a building and I'd be operational in, 10 to 18 months, that might not be feasible if we don't have a site that's been ready. So we've worked very closely with VEDP as well as the Planning District Commission, Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, to develop a better ready site inventory. They started first with the 100-acre sites. Well, we know those are far and few between, but now they're in that next level of 25-acre sites. And then after that, we'll continue to drill down till we get the best inventory we can of our sites. So it's not just getting that inventory and knowing where they are, but then it's putting the steps in place to be able to say, okay, this site is what the state might call a tier 2, which, you know, it has a few things that have been done, but it's still got a lot of work to do. Most people want a 4 or 5 site. So now what can we do to get it to a 4? And let's go ahead and do that and try to accelerate that opportunity so that that site can be ready and we can show it to them and know that they could have a building on it in 9 to 10 months. And then supply chain, I mentioned this earlier, that's really critical. You know, first opportunity is, can we connect them with local suppliers? We want to strengthen that web as much as possible. And I think that's where, again, a regional organization is really able to participate very strongly and take the lead. I've had, for example, Virginia Beach reach out to me for a company that was trying to get in touch, one of their companies, with Huntington Ingalls and Newport News. And it's difficult for Virginia Beach Economic Development to get into that access. But it's something that we have relationships on both sides, so we were able to connect those two companies together. We actually are working on another project with Portsmouth and Newport News with a joint company, and we'll be very excited to talk a little bit more about that as it materializes. But again, we're looking for where are those opportunities that we can pull the region together and strengthen those that supply chain. And then when we recognize that supplier isn't here, okay, now we have an attraction opportunity. What would it take to get that supplier here and bring them to the region? So what are sort of the target areas that we're looking at for BRE? You know, how do we identify those companies that we want to make sure we're paying attention to, we're interacting with? You know, right now I'm a one-person team in 11 different jurisdictions, so that's a lot of places to be. So we have to think about strategically, how can we set up this program and ecosystem to really assist businesses, but also be able to make sure that we're paying attention to those that are really poised for growth and expansion right now. Some of that is, again, looking at what are companies that have received past incentives, both from the state and the local level? You know, again, regionally, we don't offer the incentives, but they are often offered with state and local levels. We need to do a better job with that aftercare. How's that company doing 1, 3, and 5 years out? What other things can we help them with now at this point? So again, we want to make sure that we're checking in with them and doing a better job with that. Target sectors, again, and I have another slide that mentions this, but we've identified 5 different target sectors in our IBM study that we know that we can see a lot of potential growth in the region. So are those businesses part of our target sectors? And that's not to say that we're going to ignore or exclude anything that isn't, if it's really important to that location or locality. But we have to make sure that we're focused in an area that we know that we've got some synergy and opportunity for growth. I mentioned growing our own earlier. Again, there are some companies that have really been poised to grow. I've had a few entrepreneur companies that I know, Dave and Charity we'd be familiar with because they've come through several of our programs, and some of them have been at Start Peninsula and other events. And you see them now, especially in the software and IT sectors is where we've seen the strength. And they start with, you know, 2 guys in a PowerPoint, and then a year and a half later they have 10 software engineers that are making 6-figure salaries and are growing, and now they're ready to go global, and they're asking questions about how can we go global? Can you help me with ITAR? So again, this is, we want to pay attention to those companies. And then those that are identified through our business intelligence resources, which again, Steve Harrison's going to talk to you all a little bit more about. Integral to supply chain and local intel, because who knows their communities better than those that are boots on the ground? So, you know, Dave and Charity, they're going to know every nook and cranny of Poquoson and who might be moving. Maybe there's a home-based business that now is looking for an opportunity for space, but they need to be connected to some other resources that aren't internal to Poquoson, but it's an opportunity to now get them into a space here. So again, how can we work together and help connect them with some of those resources? And then investor relations. So our organization, as you're probably aware, is made up of approximately 50% public funding that comes through the localities, and at least 50% of that funding does come from private sector support. And I see those investors as people that really believe in the Hampton Roads community and the economy. If they're going to invest in our organization, then they believe in Hampton Roads economic development. And they're business owners. So how's their business doing? What do they see? What opportunities do they see? What challenges do they see? And I've had some great meetings with some of our investors that have had fantastic ideas, and they've just never had an opportunity to sort of express them or get them out. And so now we've got that opportunity to look at and say, hey, maybe we can create a really unique program around this. So, I mentioned just a minute ago the sectors. So these are the 5 sectors that were identified in our IBM study. We have sort of tweaked these a little bit and offered sort of subsectors. For example, where you see shared services, we also often refer to that as professional services. It's a little bit easier for people to understand and relate to what that is. Transportation technology is really, the words transport really kind of mean maritime. But it's also wind is something else that we have started to look at, wind industry along with that, and other advanced manufacturing that we have here in the region. So it's not just limited to that. But when you see some of those words, they have a little bit broader meaning. And so as we develop these and get into subsectors, you'll see some better descriptions of what those are. So one thing that's coming in 2020, this is pretty exciting. So we recently went on a board diet. The organization had, I don't know, at least 30 to 40 board members. It was one of those that, as many boards that, oftentimes if you were, an investor, then you got a seat on the board, or, everybody had sort of a seat at the table, all 11 jurisdictions, everybody. So it's a little hard to manage when you have a board of that size, as just you can imagine. And so, but we wanted to make sure we had as much engagement as we could, and we wanted to start to drill down into some of those areas where, again, we can have deeper conversations. And it's not just, that monthly looking at the balance sheet and that overview presentation. So the board is now, for 2020, going to be made up of 6 public and 7 private members. And so those 6 public are, I believe it's our 5 largest localities, and it's either 4 or 5, and then the other are rotating smaller localities, and that seat will continue to rotate. It is made up of 7 private, and then an ex officio. So again, it's a much smaller board. And then below that, now this is where this is the fun part, where we start to get into those committees. And these committees are going to be made up of public and private sector, so that, again, we have everybody at the table working together and having these conversations. And so as you can see, we've got our targeted industries listed there. But another piece that Steve Harrison will talk a little bit more about when he comes is the research roundtable. This is actually his second trip to Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance. He had left and been in Virginia Beach for a few years and has come back, and he has reinvigorated the research roundtable, which now that will have subcommittees broken down into it. So again, one that's really focused on sites and facilities. We have one that's really going to be focused on supply chain recruitment, economic impact, and data discovery. And so again, we can really start to pull a lot more resources together and create this tighter web and ecosystem. So we're going to be looking too for business participation on these. So if you see something up there that's of interest of you, please let me know. And then I'm not going to get too far into this because, again, this is just sort of to set it up with some of the business intelligence tools that Steve will talk a little bit more about later on. But I did just want to give you an idea of those tools that we do have access to and programs that we participate in. So CoStar, as some of you might be familiar with, is your commercial real estate site. You do have to pay subscriptions to participate and get access to all information, but it also can give us data about trends. So we can look at, okay, what's the average lease rate, for, even if it's retail space in Poquoson compared to Newport News, Hampton, York County. We're able to actually pull figures like that for y'all and look and see how competitive things are. So it does give us a lot of extra tools in that area. MZ, this is a jobs program. It allows us to really look at what people are hiring for, what is the skills gap. Again, that's great as we're looking at workforce programs. But if a business says, is looking at this area and they say, well, I'm going to need this many welders and this many that, we can pull those jobs in and see what is the opportunity, which ones are going to be more difficult to hire, which ones are going to be easier for them to address. RS means that's an estimating software for construction purposes. Gazelle, this is an interesting program we've just started using more recently. A lot of people use it as an attraction tool, but it's a great BRE tool because it will allow us to go into communities or areas, and it basically will grade businesses 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 based off of a lot of different algorithms. They'll even their AI programs will even scale what's been in the news, what articles have been published about a company, and it will basically help us identify which companies look like either they're going to pop like they're ready for expansion. So if we see those 4s and 5s on there, we want to touch those and say, hey, something exciting's going on. We want to know about it. How can we help you? But plus too, if they're looking around, we don't want them to leave the region. So we want to make sure if they're growing, that they're growing here. But at the same time, we can look at those 1s and 2s and say, oh, I'm surprised to see this company looks like they're in some trouble. What can we do to help and see if we can strengthen them with resources? So that's an interesting one. Esri, that's one that a lot of localities have subscriptions to, and we do have some add-ons like our business analyst office, which allows us to go in and do a deeper dive based off of demographics for an area. And so Conran, that is our Salesforce system, and so that is what we use for our customer relationship management. We really are continually tweaking that to improve that system because we want to make sure that we have a great database of information in there. We're not only using it just to track our projects, but to really collect information about our business community. And that, again, that information is your information. So Charity calls up and says, hey, do you have anything on such a business? Or do you remember when we met with so-and-so? We can go back and pull up that information that's tracked in that database. So, so again, and DB Hoovers, that just gives, but sort of a company overview. It's sort of a good broad brush when we're starting to take a look at things, so. And again, just a few of the other business intelligence tools that most people have access to, but we always, of course, are looking at these and utilizing these as we're formalizing our data. And so that's pretty much what I have as far as what we're looking at. One other thing I did want to mention too is I mentioned VEDP, Virginia Economic Development Partnership, and our great relationship with them. Toy Hunter, who is actually the Hampton Roads Business Retention manager for VEDP, she is now based in our office. And so she and I have worked as a team, which has been fantastic because from her perspective and what the state is doing right now with their BRE program, they're really focused on the R. We're really focused on the E because we're looking at the growth. And so it's very complementary to each other. And so So she and I have been able to really share a lot of information, have that better connection to VEDP when we're working on a project, and so it's been a great relationship. And if if only one of us is able to come to a meeting, because again, she's one person for a region, I'm one person, we're able to divide and conquer and get back together on information. So it's wonderful having that and having that state resource based in our office. I don't know that any other regions have done that yet, where they've actually had the VEDP person land sitting in their office. And so that's been very exciting and great for us as well. So I just wanted to mention that. And I think you had a meeting recently with a business that you and Toy participated in together here in Poquoson. So again, she's here meeting with businesses as well and offering her assistance. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I know that was quite a bit of information there, but.
HREDA, I might add, if you want to expound on it, but HREDA has been participating in a whole regional review of Hampton roads and what our brand is to the United States and the world, and what our name and all of these different things. They're getting ready to make an announcement, not HREDA, but hired a consulting group and everything. And HREDA, though, has developed a whole marketing plan based on this announcement and going out and rebranding the region. So it's pretty interesting what's going on.
Yeah, so we'll and again, it's not so much about what we call ourselves. I think is we have not done as good a job as we could with that place marketing and telling our story. And we have an amazing story to tell here. I actually recently had the opportunity to be in Germany and for a work trip and meeting with several businesses and companies over there. And most of them hadn't heard of Hampton Roads, of course. Some of them couldn't find Virginia on a map, but they knew it was somewhere in the middle. But they, they just kept saying, wow, you have such an easy place to sell. You have such an easy job. Because once you start talking about the assets, world's largest naval base, third busiest port on the East Coast, soon to be the deepest channel, our military workforce, NASA, Jefferson Lab. These are Langley Air Force Base, every branch of the military, and you just go on and on and on. The distribution and logistics, the software and IT companies that we have coming along. It's pretty astounding. I can't think of another place that has such diversity and such strong assets. So it does make it a very, very easy sell for us. So some of it is really just telling that story a little bit better, who we are and what we do, and getting behind what we call ourselves. So.
The state is #1 again. I don't know if everyone's seen that in magazines, but Virginia is back on the top this year. They've been listed as the #1.
Yes.
Usually in the top 5, at least 10, but we're back at #1.
Yeah.
Oh, you're fine. So there's not going to be the push to go coastal?
I have not been told what the final
10
name
days,
is.
it's going to be announced.
I wish there was. We do clients all over the country, and I just give up trying to explain. When you say coastal Virginia, it kind of resonates. Oh, the coast. Hampton Roads.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what way that's going to go, because again, I think a lot of it is going to be about how we tell that story. I know for me personally, and using the name Hampton Roads, I explained to them that it is the water body and it's the tie that binds us all. All of the tributaries that flow in and out, the naval base, the Port of Virginia, and roads actually means safe harbor and where ships can safely lay at anchor. So where better to place your business than, a place that you can safely. Yeah.
Just have Amy on on speed dial.
I will say, and again, I don't know which direction it's going. I truly don't. They know I have my opinion about it. My license plate says "Love HRVA" out there. I wake up with a view of the Hampton Roads every morning. So again, I truly can't say which direction it's going or if it's going to be a combination of that. But I will say that I think that, again, it's about telling that story because, I mean, Silicon Valley's not made of silicon, but everybody knows where it is, what they do, you know. When I say Apple, you know, you don't think of the fruit, you think of, you know, the device in your pocket. And so, again, some of it is really being able to brand market, you know, what we are and just getting behind what that is. So, but.
Well, we're excited to see what the future holds as a lot of work's been done in the first 6
Yes.
months.
Yeah.
And coming back as this evolves further and
Definitely.
how it can directly benefit the businesses that are based here in the city. Would love to kind of hear that story and what we can do to maybe help further that endeavor.
Excellent. Yeah, we look forward to that. And I will mention, I think y'all are probably aware, our new CEO came on in September, Doug Smith. He is previously he was the city manager of Norfolk and left that job to take this opportunity because he truly believed in our region. And he's served in as an elected official in Portsmouth. He served in private sector. He has served in public sector in several different localities. And so it's great to have him on board. I mentioned that, you know, I've come from local government here. Steve Harrison, who's going to come see you guys, I think in February, is local government here. And so, again, we're trying to pull that region together and be able to connect those dots a little bit better from, you know, our assets that are here. So,
Thank you, Amy.
thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Appreciate it.
Moving on our agenda, we had one item under unfinished business and related to the bond capacity discussion. And Tanya's here as well, and I guess ask that I had a couple months ago, I guess, was related to the timing of when the city would have a better picture of their need either to use our bond capacity or not, thus that we could potentially utilize that as a revenue generator for the EDA in the case that the city does not need that.
Well, good morning. Thank y'all for having me. As it relates to the year, we take each year differently. There is a phase 2 that City Council is still working. That kind of gets along, we'll have a better gauge. But of course, please make sure that capacity, and then that way we can bring it to the City Council, or we can. We should know definitely probably by May timeframe if we are going to go to market this year. If we don't know by May, we.
Run on a calendar year or the city's fiscal year?
It's a calendar.
So there's capacity from 2019
Correct.
that hasn't been used.
And of course, at this gauge,
Hard to use it right now.
if you find someone that can close within the next 3 weeks, absolutely.
Yeah, that's always the awkward part of it, is it's on a calendar cycle and the
It is on
city's on the
the
fiscal
legislature.
year, and so.
And I know the attorney at Jones Blackman that was, of course, had Poquoson in the back of his mind, has left the firm, so I don't know if
Jim has the best contacts. Kaufman and Knoll does a lot of it.
Bond lawyers at Jones Blackman,
Kaufman and
past.
Knoll, I mean,
Oh,
Kaufman always has attorneys helped us in the past with, letting the council at Kaufman and Knowles know it was getting those things.
Yeah, we have a pretty active bond section, and as soon as we knew this year, I think it was as late as October maybe, I did put it out to our bond team, but they said they would certainly keep it in mind. But as you say, at that point in the year, deals closing in 2019, have your source of funding lined up before time of the year. So our challenge as we've tried to leverage this as our only really substantive revenue source, getting the release to put it out there. And I don't know, I mean, but I know the city adopts their budget in sort of May, June timeframe. Why we don't know whether the bond capacity is available until October or August off. I mean, it hasn't, this year was particularly late, but I don't know that it's ever come before August. So if there was a way, that was just communication breakdown or, better.
Well, and let me give you, so the budget can pass without, because considering in 2018, they advisories in June, and in July, we were at market. That happened outside of the budget. So when chances are, if I was a betting person, which I'm not, this 2020, I don't foresee us going to market. There's a good potential for 2020, but I can't. Because again, it's up to the discretion of city council.
One of the things David asked me to do, which we've been working on, but is not complete yet, is trying to pull together a list of all the bond lawyers in the region, not just the folks in our side, to have even charity, so whenever in the future the city capacity is available, they can send out sort of a uniform notice to the
First commitment, and then, of course, they used the Newport News EDA to refinance their debt, and that was with CNU. So, of course, I'm going to make sure I keep Dave informed. Our financial advisors will be here in December. If y'all are interested in attending, feel free to come, and we can introduce you to Davenport.
Thank you, and maybe it's worth, when that list is compiled in January or February, sending an initial mailing, hey, we're at Poquoson allowances that fluctuate year over year depending upon the needs of the city, and keep us in mind and reach out should you have someone who is in the market for that. And just puts us on their radar screen, and then if they do, circle back and see if the opportunity is needed or not.
Appreciate that.
Staff activities, Dave, I'll turn it over to you, if
I
you will.
appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Legacy update, our Community Development Director, Wally Horton, is here, and I would ask Wally up and share the latest news regarding Legacy. There has been, I believe, some advancement.
Thank you. There has indeed been some advancements. We have wrestled, the Planning Commission, well, you guys did, as well as the City Council and the Planning Commission have wrestled with several applications. I'll give you a quick rundown of those. I'll talk about where the site plan is right now. First request, the proffer amendment, it did pass. City Council passed that with a provision suggested by the applicant that they build the clubhouse and pool at the 120th single-family or town house home. Originally, they had wanted, prior to the 147th, which would have taken the pool and the clubhouse construction out to Phase 2 or some later phase. So we've got that in Phase 1, later in Phase 1, but still in Phase 1. That passed. The second request was a rezoning amendment, and that was just to approve some revised architectural drawings that were, for whatever reason, not submitted the first go-around. They're a little lower scale than H.H. Hunt, but it's basically to give more of a variety of price points within the development. 4 buffers went down to 3 buffers. The one that concerned the EDA was withdrawn by the applicant prior to the city council meeting. Apparently, there was primarily because there was some concern with some wetland areas that have had to have renewed their DEQ permit or alter their DEQ permit. They chose not to go. Time later, who knows? But so that was withdrawn. The first buffer amendment that was considered by the city council was one adjoining the large area of the, just call it the white property, toward the rear of the development. That was approved. Planning Commission recommended denial. City Council heard it and hadn't approved it. The applicant had some additional information that City Council considered. The buffer for the commercial building and the parking lot for the commercial building, that was also approved, as well as the extension of what is denoted on the master plan as Street A to make room for a T turnaround buffer area. So that was the applications. The site plan, we're still awaiting the third submittal. I will tell you that we had some rather significant stormwater and engineering comments, as well as some zoning comments about setback and that sort of things. And of course, one of the things that initiated the T turnaround was comments from both engineering services. So we're waiting the third submittal. I think the engineers probably, well, I think we're going to see a significantly different plan from the standpoint of stormwater and engineering with the third submittal. So when that comes in, I would anticipate that probably.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Wally.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a great holiday. I don't see you between now and then.
Mr. Chairman, excuse us, because we're going to the agenda meeting.
Thank you.
Ribbon cutting activity?
Yes, we did hold a cutting for the Poquoson Dance Studio, which has been here for 20 years. They've been in the shopping center, and I think, I don't know if it was, but at any rate, they were scouting around and came across a business property, available, and they negotiated it, and it's really attractive. It doesn't have frontage, but it's really not that retail needed to have the frontage to attract people. People are aware of it in the city, and they promote it. It's good following. So it's an existing company with a brand new location, so we held a ribbon cutting for them. And I may as well lead right into the holiday
Absolutely.
shop and dine. Yeah, the promotional materials, these have been posted in various locations. And these are tabletops in most of the restaurants in Poquoson, out everywhere. And this weekend, Friday's a big parade. This weekend, all these different businesses have agreed to have special promotional. They do a sidewalk sale or a special sale or special foods or special pricing. Everyone does it their own way, but they are participating in this weekend to kick off the holidays in the city of Poquoson. So.
No, we're just very pleased with the holiday shop and dine, and Gretchen Gokenauer in the Recreation Office thanks to her for the graphic design of those elements. And, we're very heartened by the fact that our holiday program with Charities Efforts has continued to grow each year and draw more interest in our retail site merchants. And we're excited about this weekend and counting on good weather.
Hope the weather holds. Last item was our next meeting scheduled for January 7th, so post-holidays there. 8:30. Any closing comments before we adjourn? None, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.